Coming up in our newscast tonight, U.S. Secretary of Defense James Mattis visits China as part of a three-nation Asia tour, while Washington security advisor travels to Moscow to work out the details of a possible U.S.-Russia summit. Political parties at Korea's National Assembly hold a closed-door meeting with the urgent task of filling key positions in parliament. All four negotiating blocs seem set to lock horns over and over again. The number of newborns in Korea falls again in April. Monthly childbirths have decreased on year every month since December of 2015. Last year, the number of newborns plummeted to a record low. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program. I'm Daniel Che. James Mattis is in China. It's the first stop in the U.S. Defense Chief's Asia tour, which includes South Korea and Japan. National Security Advisor John Bolton also traveled out of the country. He is in Russia to discuss a possible Washington-Moscow summit. Lee Ji-won starts us off with the diplomatic efforts to discuss various issues, including North Korea.
U.S. Secretary of Defense James Mattis arrived in China on Tuesday and met with Chinese State Councilor and Minister of National Defense Wei Fenghe on Wednesday to exchange issues of common concern. This is Mattis' first visit to China, as well as the first time a U.S. defense chief visits Beijing since 2014. Wei said Mattis' visit will help facilitate healthy interactions and promote mutual trust between the two militaries. The Pentagon chief said that the military-to-military relationship is critical to the border relationship between their two countries and expressed his hopes that the rest of his talks in China will be as open and honest as the talks he had with Wei. Mattis is also expected to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping later in the day, where the topics of North Korea's denuclearization and the developments on the Korean Peninsula are expected to top the agenda. At a press conference in Alaska on Tuesday, before heading to China, Mattis told reporters that North Korea's ballistic missile capabilities still exist today and that the U.S. takes them very seriously. But he added that for now, there is full support for the diplomats who are trying to solve the issue, namely U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and National Security Advisor John Bolton, and that the U.S. will see progress in the days and weeks ahead. Mattis is expected to travel to Seoul on Thursday for talks with South Korean Defense Minister Song Young-moo before heading to Japan the next day. Meanwhile, Security Advisor John Bolton is expected in Moscow on Wednesday for talks with his Russian counterpart and possibly with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The Kremlin said on Tuesday the two diplomats will talk about international security and stability, disarmament, regional problems, and bilateral ties. This is seen as an effort to pave the way for a possible summit between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russia's President Putin. Bolton is due to give a news conference Wednesday afternoon local time on the outcome of his visit and possibly on the details of the possible U.S.-Russia summit. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
A U.S. Senate committee approves President Donald Trump's pick for ambassador to South Korea. Admiral Harry Harris now awaits a full vote scheduled for July. Kim Yo-sun gets us better acquainted with the former head of the Pacific Command.
The U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee on Tuesday unanimously approved President Trump's pick for ambassador to South Korea. Harry Harris, the former chief of the U.S. Pacific Command, now awaits a full Senate vote expected for early July. Shortly after, he should fill the post that has remained vacant since the Trump administration took office 18 months ago. Harris, who is considered a hawk on foreign policy issues, had earlier supported the idea of pausing joint military drills between Washington and Seoul at his confirmation hearing earlier this month.
I think the whole landscape has shifted, and I believe that we should give major exercises, a pause to see if Kim Jong-un, in fact, is serious about his part of the negotiations.
Stressing the importance of continuing negotiations with North Korea, Harris also highlighted the need to create breathing space.
I think that we do need to create some breathing space for the negotiations to continue and to assess whether Kim Jong-un is serious on his part of the deal or not, and I think this gives us that opportunity.
If confirmed by the Senate, Harris will serve as Washington's top envoy to Seoul at a time when the allies are coordinating closely on a range of issues, mainly the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Kim Hye-sun, Arirang News.
Another round of defense cost-sharing negotiations held in Seoul between South Korea and the U.S. ended without a conclusion. The fourth session was led by the Foreign Ministry's representative for defense burden sharing, Chang Won-sam, and his American counterpart, Timothy Betts. According to Yonhap News, the key negotiators tried to close gaps in both sides' positions, but no agreement was reached. Talks, which kickstarted in March, are to continue later in the year. According to the 9th Special Measures Agreement, or SMA, between the two sides, Seoul covers the expenses of South Korean workers at U.S. military bases in the country, as well as costs related to facility construction and logistical support. As such, Seoul is expected to pay some $900 million this year, roughly 50% of the total annual cost of deploying American troops on South Korean soil. The two sides are aiming to ink their 10th SMA within 2018 before the 9th SMA signed in 2014 expires this year. A group of South Koreans will embark on a 3-day trip across the border as part of preparations for the long overdue reunions of families separated by the Korean War. They will inspect the Mount Kumgang resort to be used in the August event, as agreed upon by the Red Cross of both sides last Friday. The team, led by the Director General of Seoul's Unification Ministry's Humanitarian Cooperation Bureau, Kim Byung-dae, is comprised of 20 people, including workers from the South Korean Red Cross and technicians. They will check the meeting rooms, hotels, rest areas, and power supplies. Following the inspection, Seoul will start renovating the facilities in July or August. Sanctions on Pyongyang will remain in place, but the two Koreas will look for opportunities for economic cooperation within that framework. That's coming from Seoul's Unification Minister, who made the remarks during the 2018 Korea Global Forum. But what about other experts that exchange views on the situation on the peninsula? Park Hyo-jun shares with us their take on the latest developments.
Economic sanctions on North Korea will remain in place until it denuclearizes completely, says Do Myung-gyun, Minister of South Korea's Unification Ministry.
The international community wants to keep the sanctions on North Korea until its complete denuclearization, and the South Korean government supports that stance.
Although concrete actions for economic cooperation are limited under the sanctions, the minister said the inter-Korean discussions will continue and that the two Koreas will push for economic activity within the boundaries of the sanctions, including reopening the Kaesong Industrial Complex. The remarks came during the 2018 Korea Global Forum that was held at the Silla Hotel in central Seoul on Wednesday. At the forum hosted by the Ministry of Unification and jointly organized by the Institute for Far Eastern Studies of Gyeongnam University and the University of North Korean Studies, experts exchanged views on the current situation on the Korean Peninsula. Experts attributed the recent thaw in relations to active summit diplomacy and the unorthodox style of the leaders involved in the talks who know how to leave the past in the past.
The reason why this time I think that we have seen a kind of a possible game change of the situation is that we have both a very unconventional leaders of United States and also the very unconventional leaders of North Korea, as well as of your president. So I think that they are not so be constrained by the so-called trust issue, but rather to have a more broader picture that why we just think something out of the box.
They also say that it's partly due to the North Korean regime's strategy shift to focusing on rebuilding its socialist economy.
Kim Jong-un made a strategic decision that he would work on economic development. He would improve the lives of the people. And what's basic to that is normalizing relations with the United States and with the Republic of Korea. And doing that, it will permit North Korea to get the financial, if you will, interaction.
There is positivity on the recent developments on the Korean Peninsula, but to keep up this momentum, experts say that countries need to move on from the past. But at the same time, they say that it's important to keep realistic expectations on future dialogue with the North. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
After nearly a month-long standstill, rival parties have finally kicked off discussions to bring the nation's parliament back to normalcy. The floor leaders are hoping for improved cooperation, but so far little to no progress is made. Kim Jong-pil has the latest from the National Assembly.
On Wednesday, floor leaders of the nation's four negotiation blocs officially began discussions on normalizing parliamentary affairs. Floor leaders of the ruling Democratic Party of Korea, main opposition Liberty Korea Party, minor Bareunmirae Party, and the group of lawmakers for peace and justice gathered at the National Assembly on Wednesday afternoon.
What's important now is for the parliament to be normalized. We, the Democratic Party of Korea, will try to give in as much as possible so that we could come up with an agreement as soon as possible.
The ruling party not only took over the top office, but also local authorities. If it also takes over the legislative power, there will be no one left to check and balance. I will try my best to come up with a compromise together with my respectful fellow floor leaders.
After speaking at a closed-door meeting, the representatives did not provide further details and stopped short of saying that business-level negotiations will begin as early as Thursday, adding that the floor leaders will gather again as soon as meaningful results have been drawn up. However, a bumpy road seems to be ahead as all four negotiating blocs have different scenarios planned, especially when it comes to allocating key positions in the parliament. One of the top agenda to be discussed is the selection of the National Assembly's new speaker and vice speakers and the heads of the 18 standing committees. Conventionally, the party with the most seats in the 300-member parliament took the speakership in Korea, which raises the chances for the ruling party to take on the key role. So the ruling party is pushing for the parliamentary leadership to be decided first. But opposition parties are claiming that the parliamentary chairmanship, comprised of one speaker and two vice speakers, should be selected in tandem with a fair allocation of standing committees. Kim Jong-pil, Arirang News.
A funeral service is held for a former prime minister who passed this weekend. While there are mixed assessments of Kim Jong-pil's legacy, he is posthumously bestowed by the Mugunghwa Medal, the country's highest order of civil merit. Kan Young-woo has the full story.
The Kingmaker and the Eternal Number 2. Those were the phrases used by many South Koreans to describe former Prime Minister Kim Jong-pil, who died on Saturday at the age of 92. An estimated 3,500 people from all walks of life and from across the political spectrum had come to pay their respects over the past few days ahead of his funeral. The send-off ceremony was held early Wednesday morning with a eulogy from former Prime Minister Lee Han-dong. Former Japanese Prime Minister Yasuhiro Nakasone, an old friend of Kim's, sent his son to the service to pay respects on his behalf. Kim's body was cremated and his ashes have been placed in his family mausoleum in Puyo, Chungcheongnam-do Province. His late wife, Park Young-ok, who died in 2015, is also interred there. Kim Jong-pil was the founder of the Korean Central Intelligence Agency, now the National Intelligence Service, and served as Prime Minister from 1971 to 1975 and again from 1998 to 2000. He also served a record 9 terms as a lawmaker. He was the last of the so-called 3 Kims who were political heavyweights in the 1980s and 90s, together with former presidents Kim Dae-jung and Kim Il-sung. Kan Young-woo, Arirang News.
A couple of important meetings at the top office were canceled today, making some question if President Moon Jae-in had other priorities. Perhaps another secret meeting with his North Korean counterpart? A speculation fueled by the fact that last month President Moon held a second summit with Kim Jong-un at Panmunjom, only disclosing it to the media after returning to Seoul. But it turns out the Liberal leader is just recovering from a cold he caught while in Russia last week. The Cheongwade spokesperson said the presidential physician advised Moon to rest until the weekend, with the schedule for the remainder of the week to be postponed or canceled. The president was set to attend a special meeting this afternoon on business deregulation. And he was also supposed to meet with the Director General of UNESCO, but the top office cited scheduling issues. South Korea has been struggling with low birth rate. So far, the situation is not getting any better. With less than 28,000 babies born in April, another record level is reached. Ko Ryuni help us look beyond the concerning digits.
Despite the government's efforts, the number of births in Korea hit another record low. According to a Statistics Korea report released on Wednesday, the number of births fell 8.9% on-year to 27,700 in April. That's the lowest since monthly records were first compiled in 1981. The number of newborn babies in the January to April period was also at its lowest level, less than 120,000. Many South Koreans feel there are two main reasons for this chronic problem. They believe it's too expensive to raise a child, and it takes a long time for a person to get a job and think about marriage.
Compared to other countries, private education is very expensive in South Korea. I think a lot of couples don't have enough money, even for the two of them, and many can't afford to pay extra for their children's education.
Many South Korean women are stressed when they are applying for universities or jobs. So after they graduate or get employed, many want to enjoy their own time instead of getting married or having a child.
In addition to these problems, a social welfare expert says many pregnant women face discrimination in South Korea.
When women get pregnant in South Korea, they're discriminated against both at home and in the workplace. At home, they have to raise their child on their own without anyone's help. At work, some are forced to leave their job. Women have to overcome this discrimination to raise a child, and many give up in the first place.
The South Korean government has poured more than $71 billion into solving the low birth rate over the past decade, including giving cash rewards to people with children. Ko Ryuni, Arirang News.
Vincent Brooks, commander of U.S. Forces Korea, stepped up to the podium to talk about recent developments in the nation. The general stressed the allies still have to keep moving forward in order to ensure a different future for the peninsula. Park Ji-won has more from his speech.
General Vincent Brooks, commander of UN Command, Combined Forces Command, and U.S. Forces Korea, delivered a keynote speech Wednesday in central Seoul at the second Korea-U.S. Alliance Forum held together with the Korean American Club. The event was attended by around 100 key military officials from Seoul and Washington, including the chairman of South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Chung Kyung-do. General Brooks praised the fact that engagement with North Korea is happening on multiple fronts, including a series of inter-Korean talks as well as historic summit talks between the two Koreas and between Pyongyang and Washington. He said in this current confidence-building process, South Korea has demonstrated a sophisticated, peaceful approach. He also said the Korean Peninsula has entered onto a new path, noting that he had faced some 50 different provocations from Pyongyang in the first 17 months that he was in office, starting in early 2016, but he stressed that it's now been over half a year with not a single provocation from the North. The general added that the ironclad ROK-U.S. alliance has also been the foundation of consistent pressure on the North, saying he thinks that's at least part of the reason for Pyongyang's change.
I'm convinced that it is part of the reason, not the entirety of the reason, part of the reason why Kim Jong-un has decided to go in other directions. And I will always believe that. But we did this in such a way that we were enabling diplomacy and economic actions to take their route. We had to help set the environment for that to occur, and CFC has done that.
General Brooks emphasized that now is a time that presents both opportunities and challenges. He said there are always reasons for doubt, but stressed that taking steps forward is the only way to make new history.
I think we have to also recognize that we are in a unique place right now. And what has happened in the past is not necessarily the prologue for what will happen in the future. We must move forward now, making the history, not relying on it. And we do that by courageously walking forward together. That's an opportunity for us. The opportunity to overcome doubt, overcome fear, take a reasonable and prudent amount of risk to go in a new direction that has not been walked before.
Regarding recent decisions by South Korea and the U.S. to suspend their annual joint military exercises, General Brooks said now is the time for all parties to work on trust building. That's why both countries are trying to leave certain part of the drills, quote, that may have been concerning and runs counter to the desired path of progress. He also emphasized that there are still many ways to use other leverage, such as adjusting the scope, scale, and timing of the drills and the volume of communication about them. The commander of U.S. Forces Korea also stressed that neither South Korea nor the U.S. are currently thinking about withdrawing U.S. forces from Korea, saying that their presence is a physical demonstration of the two countries' strong mutual commitment and that the alliance is as strong as ever. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
World-renowned opinion leaders, diplomats, and government officials have gathered in the nation's southernmost resort island. They will sit down to exchange ideas on international cooperation and peace on the peninsula, among other topics. Hong Yu takes us to the opening ceremony of this year's Jeju Forum.
South Korea is ready to end the decades-long division on the Korean Peninsula. Prime Minister Lee Nak-yeon said Wednesday at the opening of the 13th Jeju Forum that the country is seeking international cooperation to build a permanent peace between the two Koreas.
The division of the Korean Peninsula was not the choice of our people, but the result of Japanese occupation and the Cold War framework. We need to overcome this with the help of the international community.
The forum has come at a timely moment following the two inter-Korean summits and the subsequent North Korea-US summit that produced a joint statement between Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump on denuclearization and improving bilateral ties. So much of the discussions during this three-day forum are dedicated to the question of maintaining the current momentum towards peace on the Korean Peninsula and turning that momentum into a permanent peace.
This year's Jeju Forum is expected to show the biggest turnout yet, with more than 5,500 people from 70 different countries. The forum runs through Thursday. Hong Yu, Arirang News, Jeju.
Sounds of gasps and cheers will echo through the nation tonight as Koreans witness the Taewook Warriors in action. It's make or break time, as this could be the team's last game in the Russia World Cup. Their final Group F match is against a perennial powerhouse of football, Germany. The odds are heavily stacked against Team Korea. However, there is a way to still advance to the next round if Mexico defeats Sweden and we beat the defending World Cup champs by 2 or more goals. It's a tall order, but anything can happen in the beautiful game. Germany will be assured of progressing to the knockout rounds with a victory. The match kicks off 5 p.m. local time, which is 11 p.m. Korea time tonight. Staying with the World Cup action, more teams joined the Sweet 16, including France and Croatia. Unfortunately, this was the end of the road for 4 other nations, including Nigeria and Australia. Lee Seung-jae has the highlights and the heartbreaks from Russia.
Day 12 of the 2018 Russia World Cup began with 2 Group C matches taking place at the same time. One of them was France versus Denmark at Moscow's Luzhniki Stadium. While France controlled the match throughout the 90 minutes, they could not penetrate the Danish defense, with the match finishing 0-0. But no matter, as both countries advanced to the next round, with France finishing first with 7 points and Denmark behind them with 5 points. The other match in Group C was Peru versus Australia. Andre Carrillo's right foot shot would give the Peruvians an early lead in the 11th minute, before Paulo Guerrero made it 2-0 for Peru in the 50th minute. Peru would hold on for the win and would finish third in Group C, while Australia finished rock bottom with 1 draw and 2 losses. Over in Group D, Iceland were looking to beat Croatia for a chance at the round of 16, thought their hopes faded when Milan Badalja's 53rd minute goal gave the Croatians a 1-0 lead. But yet another penalty, this time Dejan Lovren's handball in the 75th minute, allowed Gylfi Sigurdsson to convert the penalty and level the match at 1-1. But Iceland's comeback hopes were crushed when Croatia's Ivan Perisic found the back of the net in the 90th minute, giving Croatia 3 straight wins in group stage. Finally, Argentina versus Nigeria, where Lionel Messi was looking to guide Argentina through the next round with a win, while Nigeria only needed a draw to progress. Messi got Argentina started early on with a brilliant goal in the 14th minute of the match, but that lead was erased in the second half when a penalty allowed Victor Moses to level the match at 1 apiece in the 51st minute. But in the 86th minute, it was Marcos Rojo to the rescue for Argentina, with the Manchester United defender slotting home a composed volley from inside the box to give Argentina the win as they sneak into the round of 16 with the last gasp 2-1 victory. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Time to turn to Michelle back at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, is Mother Nature going to be with us tonight when Team Korea takes on Germany at the Russia World Cup?
Well, Daniel, our team went through a rough training recently and with lots of rain. But tonight, the conditions in Kazan will be stable and mild and also clear. Now, checking back through weather in the nation, the monsoon front will bring another heavy downpours tonight in the southern regions especially. And meanwhile, the northern part of the country may receive some sporadic light showers tomorrow in the afternoon and through the evening. During the day, conditions will be similar for Seoul as today, hot and humid. Now, whereas in the south, it's going to stay wet. Tomorrow, the morning begins at 22 degrees Celsius in Seoul and slightly warmer for the south. But into the day, Seoul will be hotter than Busan at 29 degrees Celsius. The monsoon rain is expected to linger with us for some time and drenching the country from Sunday until Monday again. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's it from us on tonight's edition of Arirang News Center. Thank you for watching wherever you may be tuning in from.